Happy Friday again. Happy Friday and happy birthday, Brianna, on Sunday. You know, I got to keep up on the birthdays. I got to look at whose birthday's coming up because I bet you a bunch of birthdays snuck through the cracks and I didn't see them. So that's my fault. We need to sing happy birthday more. Now, since it's quarantine time, usually I ask the person, if we're in class, I ask the person, when's the party? When can we all go? Or can we just pass by and get a plate? You know how we do. But since it's quarantine, I'm not going to ask that. We always want a plate. Tomorrow, no, social distance. A Zoom party. Zoom party. No, social distance. You guys haven't been vaccinated. It's going to be a super spreader party. All right, so let's go over this warm-up. It should have been pretty simple, but if it's not, it's okay. What is the measurement of the missing angle? Can anyone tell me what it is? $42, you think. Okay, anyone else have a guess? So I have one guess at 42. Uh-oh, I'm recording. You can't unmute yourself. Sorry about that. 42. Anyone else get 42? Anyone else get anything different? So we have a lot of people verifying that it's 42. Does that mean it's correct? Maybe you all got it wrong? Can you? Oh, come on. Can you? Tell me why. Why is it 42? Right. I hope by the end of this class, at least one thing you get out of this. There's a lot of things you should get out of this class. But one thing you should get out of this class is the answer. The answer is not the ultimate thing here. Right? It's the meat in between, right? When you make a sandwich, the bread is good and the bread can be really, really good. But what matters most in the sandwich is the insides. Yes, the bread does matter. I'm not saying the bread doesn't matter. But the meat inside, all the stuff, even if it's not meat, all the stuff inside is what matters. Same thing as a math problem, right? You have the question. You have the answer. Those are your breads. But what I'm interested in is all the stuff inside. How do I, from one to the other? What's in between the question and the answer? And that's what I care about. That's what you should care about. Yes, that's important. And that's important. Right? The bread's important. But all the stuff in the middle, that's the most important. Mister, I've had bread sandwiches before where nothing is in here. I just had 2 pieces of bread. Okay, yeah, I've been there too. And sometimes we have bread sandwiches. Sometimes the question and the answer, there really is no insides because it's kind of obvious. So yeah, we've had some bread sandwiches before. I grew up poor, so I know. So why? So someone said because we have 90 and 42 degrees. And what does that mean? So yes, this is 90 degrees. Very good. And that's 48. So why is that? So why does that make that one 42? Typing, not quick. It's okay. Anyone else? I mean, this person said this is 90 degrees. This is 48 degrees. Yes, that is true. But why? Tell me why does that make this 42? Because all the angles of a triangle, right? The sum of the angles of any triangle is 180 degrees. And you all should know that. You all should know that. And so in a right triangle, let me get this mess out of here. Some of you tell me, Mister, sometimes you make a mess on the screen and messes make my brain hurt. So can you be more clear? So sure. So if you look at this right triangle, this is 90, right? That means 90 degrees. And so that means if all three add up to 180, half of the degrees are in that corner. So that means this and this have to add up to 90 degrees, right? Because 90 plus 90 is 180. And so that makes these two angles, what do we call two angles that add up to 90 degrees? Ooh, this is a throwback Thursday. No, flashback Friday. There you go. I forgot my days. What do we call two angles that add up to 90 degrees? Oh, come on.
Bueller.
Cute. Someone said cute angle. No, but close.
Bueller.
It does start with a C.
Bueller.
Now, what you're thinking is acute angles. And yes, since both of these are less than 90 degrees, yes, that's an acute angle. And that's an acute angle because they both have to be less than 90 degrees because they add up to 90 degrees. And yes, I see it in the chat. Complementary angles. So, in a right triangle, the two angles that are not the right angles are complementary. That means they add up to 90 degrees. That makes sense because this one's 90 degrees. The other two have to add up to the other 90 degrees because it has to add up to 180. And yes, each of these angles are acute angles. Acute angles. Supplementary means they add up to 180. Right? Complementary means they add up to 90. Okay? So we know these two angles add up to 90 degrees, so that means they're complementary, and each angle is acute. Oh, look at that angle. It's cute. No, it's acute. Okay? Everyone good? That's a little review on some vernacular, some vocabulary you should know. And some facts you should know. All the angles of a triangle, of any triangle, add up to 180. In a right triangle, half of the degrees, half of the 180s right here. So that means the other half, the other 90 add up, or these two add up to 90, which means if they add up to 90, that means the acute angles. So we can write a sentence here. Let's write a sentence here. The acute angles of a right triangle are, oh my God, I can't write. Oh my God. Let's try this again. I have a Band-Aid on my index finger, so that's not helping. The acute angles of any right triangle are complementary. That means they add up to 90 degrees. And that makes sense because the acute angles, that means these small angles right here, always add up to 90 because that's 90 because it's a right triangle. And 90 plus 90 is 180. And we know the sum of angles of any triangle is 180. Okay? Why call them acute? Because they're less than 90. Acute means less, let's do it better. Less than 90 degrees. Right? You can't have two 90-degree angles in a triangle. So that means these two have to be less than 90 because that's already 90. You can't have another 90-degree angle because they have to add up to 180. So yeah, we call them acute because they are both less than 90 and they both add up to 90. Okay, so this is a fact you should know. The acute angles of any right triangle are complementary. And which ones are the acute angles? The acute angles are the ones that aren't the right angles. the ones that aren't the right angle. All right, any questions on this warm-up? You always make the warm-up more complicated than it is. This one, the answer is 42, done. I'm finished. And then you have to explain why. You have to tell me why and make everything more difficult. No, I'm not making everything more difficult. I'm giving you knowledge. I'm reviewing stuff that you should know that maybe you forgot. All right, any questions? Did everyone write this down? As I told you yesterday, those of you that aren't doing your work, when you hold off doing your work, you hold off your practice, right? You hold off your practice, and then that means you're not good at the stuff at the time. So you should try to do things as we do it. So I'm doing these notes right now. You should write down the notes. It's like if you were on the basketball team and you had practice every Wednesday, right? Let's just pretend basketball has practice every Wednesday. And I don't know if they do or not, but it's just this imaginary basketball team. If you have practice every Wednesday and then you don't go for a month for 4 practices, you can't just make up, I'm going to make up all the practice. I'll just stay for each one. So I missed 4 hours, so I'm going to stay here for 5 hours. No, you had to be there every practice because each practice we went over different things. The first practice, we went over some basic drills. Second practice, we started running some plays. Third practice, we started adjusting these plays based on how we're playing with each other and your skills. And then the last practice, we put it all together in our final plays for our game plan for the game. Right? And that's how practices happen. You build up. You build up from the previous practice. You learn from the previous practice, and that way you can adjust and do the next practice to get better. Same thing here. If you wait to do your work, you're kind of not progressing like you're supposed to. You're kind of not building from the last thing. You're trying to do everything at once, and then that's still so stressful, trying to do a bunch of work at once. Right? So try to do these things and write these down, even if you don't want to. I know. Even if you don't want to. Try to write these down. Especially this. Acute angles of any right triangle are complementary. Okay. All right, it is Friday, April 16th. Woohoo, Friday. Today's objective, to understand what the trigonometric ratios are. And again, you can just say trig for short. You can say trig if you don't like that long word. Trigonometric. And what's the first 3 letters of trigonometry or trigonometric? Tri, which means 3, 3-sided. Okay. And then we're going to use these ratios. Again, ratios, we're just comparing 2 things. So we're just going to have a fraction. You're going to need to know what the fraction is. And then we use these trig ratios to find missing side lengths, to find sides of a triangle that we don't know that we want to know. Okay? And then again, we have the homework. It says it's due tonight, but again, I will give you until Monday. And if we need more time, I will give us more time if we don't finish the lesson. But there you go. All right, so let's take out our notes. Here we go. And the first thing is, what is trigonometry? Mister, that's a long word. And all it means is the study of triangle measurements. Meaning their sides and their angles. So that's what trigonometry is. It's just the study of triangle measurements. Okay? And most people say, oh, I thought trigonometry was a study of right triangles. Yes, trigonometry starts with right triangles, but trigonometry also extends to any triangles. We can use trigonometry ideas and extend them to any triangle. So yes, it is mainly right triangles, and that's what we start with. But it does apply to triangle measurements of all triangles. It does not discriminate. It does start with right triangles, but it does not discriminate. Okay? So we start trigonometry with these 3 basic ratios. Okay? These 3 basic ratios. And if you look here, we're going to have to know a few things. Okay, we're going to have to know where the angles are and where the sides are. So if you look here, here is angle A. You guys see angle A? And on the opposite side of angle A, so over here, is side A. Okay, that's usually what we do. If we call angle A over there, the side opposite is the lowercase, just so we know where things belong. So we have a lowercase a. And then we have angle B over here. And then across from B, the side across from B is lowercase b. That's usually what we do. And then C, angle C, across from angle C, we usually call it. Now you don't have to. It isn't a must, but that's what we usually do. Okay? Angle A, it just makes our formulas and stuff a lot easier. Okay? Because there are going to get some complicated formulas, which we're not going to get to too complicated formulas. That's going to happen in Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc, which I hope all of you take. But it makes our formulas a lot easier. So sides and angles are like that. And so if you look here, okay, if you look here, A and B, those are the acute angles. Right? They add up to 90 degrees. They are complementary. And C is the right angle. Okay? This side over here is the hypotenuse, right? We know the hypotenuse. That's an important side to know. That's an important side to know. Okay? Now, here's where the confusion comes in, and I'm going to try to unconfuse you right now. There are two words you're going to need to know. You're going to need to know opposite side. So let me write this down. You're going to need to know what opposite side means. And you're going to need to know what adjacent side means. You're going to need to know what those two things mean. Okay, so opposite means across on the opposite side. Adjacent means next to. Adjacent means next to. Okay? Everyone clear on those two phrases? The opposite side and the adjacent side. Opposite side just means if I'm telling you, hey, what's the opposite side? It's just the side that's on the other side. It's on the opposite side. And when I say, hey, what's the side that's adjacent? It's the side that's next to. Now you're saying, next to what, mister? Next to what? I'll explain that in a second. But I just want to make sure you understand what opposite means. It means across from, not touching. It's over there. And adjacent means, oop, it's right here, right next to me. Adjacent means right next to me. Okay? So here we go. Here's what I'm talking about. When I say opposite or adjacent, I'm talking about in reference to an angle. Okay? Because I'm going to find ratios of an angle. But I know some of you get confused. Wait, you're finding ratio of an angle? What do you mean? When I find the ratio of an angle, I want to compare two things. I want to compare a side and over another side. Okay, so when I say sine over here, when I say the sine of an angle, that means I want a ratio. And what's the ratio? The ratio of sine is the ratio of the leg opposite of the angle to the hypotenuse. So it's opposite side over the hypotenuse. So the side opposite the angle over the hypotenuse. Okay. And so let me show you what that means with this triangle right here. If we're going to look at this triangle, if I want to know the sine of A, what's the sine of angle A? Well, this is telling me the sine, and that's the angle I'm interested in, A. So if I look over here, here's angle A. You guys see that? So the sine of angle A is the opposite side of the angle over the hypotenuse. So what is the opposite side? So sine of A, What's the opposite side? So it's the side way over here, the opposite. So it's A. And what's the hypotenuse? C. So it's A over C. You guys see that? When I'm finding the sine of an angle, I'm just making a ratio. I'm just making a ratio. And that ratio is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. What do you mean opposite, mister? Well, what angle am I talking about? I'm talking about angle A, right? I'm finding the sine of angle A. And we do SIN for short. We don't have to write the whole thing. SINE, just sin for short. And when I want to know the sine of an angle, I'm making a ratio of the sides. And the sides are opposite over hypotenuse. Those are the two things I'm comparing. The opposite side, which is way over here. Opposite means on the opposite side. And the hypotenuse is just C. So A over C. So let's write that down. A over C. So now what would be the sine of B? Let's use a different color. What would be the sine of B? So now I'm looking at angle B. So if I look at angle B, what's the opposite side of angle B? So if I write that over here, the sine of B, what's the opposite side of B? What side is the opposite of angle B? Side B. And what's the hypotenuse? C. So when I find the sine of something, I'm just finding a ratio. That's all this is. That's a ratio. And what's the ratio? Opposite side over hypotenuse. That's what sine is. Opposite side over hypotenuse. Now, right now, we don't have real numbers, so some of you are like, what are you talking about, mister? What's A, B, and C? And I agree with you. Looking at letters is not the best way to learn this. Right? If you look at letters, it's not the best way to learn this. But it's just a way to get an idea of what's going on. We'll do some numbers in a second. So sine of A is just saying, hey, sine just means, what's the ratio? What's the opposite over hypotenuse of this angle? Okay, so we look at this angle and say, oh, opposite is way over here, that side, over hypotenuse, which is C. So whatever number this is goes up here, and whatever number this is goes down here. And that's your ratio. That's all this is. When you see sine, S-I-N, of an angle, all it is asking for is a ratio of two sides. That's all it's asking for. It looks complicated. It looks different for a lot of you who didn't see this, who've never seen this before. But all it is, when you see sine, cosine, or tangent, it's just saying, write a fraction, right? And you can transfer it to decimals. You'll see decimals because we can do this in calculators. But it is basically, we're doing a fraction. Now, what fraction is sine? Sine is opposite side over hypotenuse. Okay. Now, cosine is another ratio. Cosine is another ratio. Okay. And what ratio is it? It's the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Okay. So it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So again, when you see cosine, or for short, COS, cos, when you see the cosine of an angle, all it's asking for is, hey, I want the ratio, I want the fraction of the adjacent side to that angle over the hypotenuse of the triangle. That's it. Just asking for a fraction. And so now I can find cosine of A, I can find the cosine of angle A, and I can find the cosine of angle B. So if we go back here, and we erase our sine stuff, we say in our brain, okay, cosine of A. So now we're going to look at A again, the cosine of A. Well, cosine, what does cosine mean? Again, you always have to know what things mean. What does cosine mean? Cosine means adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So if we look here, if I look at angle A, and again, we're doing the cosine of A. That's the angle we're focusing on. So what's the adjacent side to A? Adjacent means next to, right? So if I look at angle A, what side? Mister, this side is next to A. Yeah, but that's not a side. Well, it is a side, but that's the hypotenuse. I want to know what leg. When I'm asking for sides, I want to know what leg is next to A. Oh, this leg, this side, which is B. Right? Not this side. This side is way over there. It's across. The one that's across is on the opposite side. The side that's adjacent to A is B. So my cosine of A would be adjacent side B over the hypotenuse. And what's the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse is C. Okay. And now let's look for the cosine of B. The cosine of B. So the cosine of B would be, well, what's the adjacent side? Remember, I'm just making a fraction. Whenever you see cosine or sine or tangent, you're making a fraction. So right here, cosine of B, here's my fraction. There's my fraction bar. What goes on the top? Let's go back over here. What goes on the top? The adjacent side. So if I look over here, what's the adjacent side to B? Oh, this is the adjacent side. Side A. And then what's the hypotenuse? C. And there you go. Now, according to the standards, according to the geometry standards, those are the only two you have to know. Now, tangent, it's kind of adjacent means next to, right? Adjacent means next to. So someone asked, hey, mister, can you explain again how you know this is an adjacent side? So if we're looking here, this is angle B, right? We're not counting the hypotenuse. We never count the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the hypotenuse. We're not counting that as a side. Okay, hypotenuse is the hypotenuse. So if I look at angle B, there's only two choices. I either have this side or this side. Well, the one that's way over here, that's not adjacent. That's way over there. It's across. It's the opposite. It's on the opposite side. Adjacent means the side that's right next to it, that's touching it. See how side A is touching B? So that's adjacent. That side is adjacent. Adjacent just means next to. That's a good question. Right? So when we're talking about sides, when we're talking about the numerator, when we're talking about adjacent or opposite, we're not talking about the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is never in the numerator for these three. The hypotenuse is the hypotenuse. So when I'm asking you for a side, I'm asking you for either that side, which is across, so it's way over there, it's opposite, or this side, the one that's right next to it. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with those two. Now, are you going to be able to turn in the homework tonight? No, we have not finished the lesson. We are not even close to finishing the lesson, right? On Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to show you SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. It's a fake word, but it sounds like a real word. I'm going to tell you why you need to know that. It's going to help you. And I am going to show you tangent. I am going to show you tangent because it is nice to know. So when you get it, when you see it in Algebra 2 next year, you'll be like, oh, I know what tangent is. Okay. So cosine of A is B over C. Cosine of B is A over C. Okay. So I'm going to change the due date. The homework is not due tonight because we are not even close because we have to just find the sine, cosine, and tangent. And then we have to use it to find side lengths using our calculator. All right. If you're confused, I will try to unconfuse you again on Monday. I'll re-explain this on Monday. I'll tell you SOHCAHTOA to help you remember these things. And you can start the homework, but you don't have to because it can be confusing because I have not explained more. And you haven't done anything with numbers yet. I want to do some examples down here with numbers. And then it'll make a little more sense once you see numbers. Right now, some of you are confused like, okay, because it's a bunch of letters. Once we get numbers, it'll clear up a lot. Okay? All right, we will continue this discussion on Monday and Tuesday. We'll probably take the whole week next week to do some trig. So I am going to change the due dates of the homework. But have a great day. And if you need to catch up on those 3 assignments, please do so. Please send me questions. Okay, and happy birthday, Brianna. And if anyone else is having a birthday, please let me know. I want to sing happy birthday to all of you. And I'm going to check up because I got to keep up on your birthdays. Because if you guys don't tell me, then I and it's kind of my fault. I should look it up. But if you guys don't tell me, I don't know.